The race for the 15th man on the Bucks roster. Is there one name we're excluding? And we put an end to the Summer League discussion coming up on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis and longtime host of the podcast, Frank Madden. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I want to get to what we started with at the top of the 15th man on the roster, because it started with an interesting conversation the three of us had offline, but we should start here, Frank. Everyone dying to know your thoughts on Summer League. You put it out there in GIF form on Twitter as well. But what exactly would you say you saw at Summer League?
Well, let's start with the positive. Love me some Larry Nance, or Pete Nance, sorry. I always did like Larry Nance too, but I enjoyed Pete Nance, the dribble handoff game.
Smooth
I came
shot.
away that set shot. I think he play against the Bucks when he had that cup of coffee with the Sixers, I think.
believe
I feel like
so.
I think he
I
did.
feel like we saw him against the Bucks, and I don't think he was like particularly good in that game, but I remember being like, this guy seems like a plausible NBA player, which is not a bad. That's kind of a compliment if you're on a two-way. And then obviously he had a nice opportunity there in that final game of the season, the Pat Connaughton game. Played well and kind of looked the part of a guy that like you could go out there and eat innings in a scenario like that. And I thought him and obviously Chris Livingston. I think obviously were like kind of the two kind of best players, most consistent guys in Vegas. And so, I was definitely happy with what I saw from Nance. I think he averaged like 2.3 blocks per game as well, which is not something that, is on the scouting report that he's like, going to be like a viable big rim protector. So I think it was generally just, I think just a very positive, showing from him. And, like if you're in a spot, I think certainly the 4 or 5 positions are a point of strength, obviously, when the Bucks are healthy. But if there's a situation where Giannis is sitting out, or one of Bobby and Miles are injured or something like that, and you need a guy to kind of step in and fill in, give you some minutes, I thought like what we saw from Nance like would make me feel like, okay, like depending on matchups like that, like he could actually hang in there. Again, like defensively, I think you worry he's not quite have the physicality against certain like kind of bigger lineups and things like that. But I thought he acquitted himself well, and it was like, okay, yeah, like that's a good type of guy to have as a two-way, kind of a reserve depth type guy. So liked what I saw from him. And then Chris Livingston, I don't know that like I saw different, like him do different good things this year than I saw him do good things last year. Maybe he was a little bit more aggressive with his 3-point shot. But like I think his physicality plays well in Summer League. Like kind of that bully ball style. Can that work, in the NBA? He was probably asked to do more than ideally you'd want, just because they had no point guards after like the first game and a half, when Mark Sears is out the entire time, and then Jamari Bouye gets injured with the hamstring injury or whatever it was. And so, Marquise Noel's playing, and, was not ideal, right, in Summer League to be down your top 2 point guards, given how guard centric Summer League tends to be. So he was probably having to do more handling. And, I think we saw his limitations as like a passer and handler to an extent. But, he played to his strengths. And I think certainly in a environment where you don't have as much size as in regular, NBA basketball, he did kind of what you would hope he would do. And obviously getting the guaranteed contract was obviously, I don't know that it was I don't know. I don't know if I believe that the idea that he like won his contract back with the way he played in Vegas. Obviously, part of waiving him was kind of cap finagling in order to free up a little bit of a smidge more of cap space, but not really a whole lot. So we'll see. But kudos to him. Kind of he did what he should have done as a third year guy. And if I'm going kind of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Like that, that's probably more or less the end of the conversation. Let me pause there. I don't know if you guys had anything else to say. Anything else you guys felt really good about? Because those were the two guys I felt good about.
Those were the two guys for sure. If I be nice to say something nice too, I'll say this. Tyler Smith was somebody coming into Summer League. I was really interested in seeing what he looked like after a year of work and off season, so on and so forth.
And that's it. And that's all you have to say. You were very interested in seeing.
No, because he shot terribly throughout the first 4 games. But what encouraged me, I'll say, about his play in Summer League was at least in the 5th game, one, he did not shy away from taking the shots, and some of that might have been out of necessity because of who was not playing. There was no Chris Livingston by that point, in addition to the point guards who were missing, but he kept shooting the shots, and he had a lot more success of seeing the ball go into the hoop for him in the 5th game. I did a spot with Euro step and with Ty, and I was telling him, like, Smitty has to keep shooting. It has not been pretty, but you got to keep shooting because that's the one skill set for him that projected, coming out of G League and whatnot. So if we're talking good news, good things, I was happy to see in the last game of Summer League, after a terrible shooting display for the first 4 games for him, that he kept shooting and he had a bit more success in that last game that they played.
I was happy Chris Livingston didn't get injured.
There you go.
That's the only other thing I have to say about Summer League.
Yeah, and I think other than that, like with Ajax, I am obviously like probably on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of my Ajax optimism. It seems like the world is following me in that trend a bit. But I also don't really judge him.
It?
What? Do you think? I think people have come around to my view. I don't think people like. I remember.
I don't know about that.
You think there's a lot I've
had?
Okay.
I think there's still a lot of Ajax troops.
There's still some believers. There's still people who got some stake on Ajax Island.
Yeah. I just remember a couple years ago, like some conversation about, it was like when Caruso was still on the Bulls, and there was like, idle chatter of like, oh, wouldn't it be great if the Bucks could add Alex Caruso? And some like concept of like, a second rounder and Ajax and whatever filler for Caruso came up, and I was just like, yeah, obviously, like, and somebody was like, you can't trade Ajax. Like, you finally have a good young player, and now you're trying to trade him. It's just like the absolute best case scenario for Ajax is he maybe becomes somebody like Alex Caruso. So like, I will take that like guaranteed player who is that over the like maybe coulda woulda in some ideal world. The guy becomes that version. And yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I think just as the season wore on, I mean, my take on Ajax is everybody likes to play the like, oh, I can't believe he kept playing, Taurean Prince and Kuzma over Ajax. I can't believe that Doc stuck with Ajax over AJ Green and Gary Trent. That is my moral high ground. That is how I high road the hell out of people that try to make me feel bad for saying that Andre Jackson Jr. played too much last year. The data was bad on him all year. And honestly, my take as well is I just have always felt like Doc also did him a disservice because like just put a target on his back when he was in the starting 5. I just feel like you could have kind of hidden some of his limitations more, bringing him off the bench. But we'll see. I will say this. I mean, it would suck if they waive him. Yeah. It would suck because it feels like there's an NBA player, I think, in there. Mm-hmm. And we all like to think that the imperfect young players on our teams should just be like, you should just be able to like, oh, just trade him for a second round pick. I mean, my guess is if that could have been done, that would have happened, Yeah. Maybe there might have been at some point, over the last year or two when that could have been possible. But my guess is now if the Bucks do need to open up a roster spot, like, they wouldn't be able to get something like that for for him? Could you get like a player potentially making a little more money with more guaranteed dollars?
Guaranteed, yeah.
Yeah, I think you could probably find like a random guy if you want to take a bet on somebody else's young player that maybe hasn't panned out so far, and they're just, somebody else is trying to cut loose like a late first round pick or something like that. Kind of trade your problem for my problem type thing.
Patrick Williams for Ajax.
Hey, under that luxury tax line, I don't think it would work from cap perspective, but you may be able to squeeze it in under the tax still. The Bucks have that much space left. So yeah, I with Ajax, I don't know. I think the reality is like the deck is stacked against him seeing minutes when you look at just the roster right now. But I think that's sort of the problem for when we look at any of the guys that are, the three roster guys that were in Vegas. Like, is Chris Livingston going to play this year? Like, I don't see it. Is Ajax going to play? At least it's plausible to me that there might be a scenario where Doc, given the history, like if they feel like, they need some of that defensive injection, maybe there is a scenario if you think you can play him at the 3 or something like that. And then obviously like with Tyler Smith, I mean, I think there's been times at his best where it's like you see the shot and he's had, I think, some kind of garbage man instincts that I think can be useful. But this time around, like it was just like, what do you do? It was that kind of feeling. And I mean, people got so excited seeing like, 30-second clips of him in the gym with some trainers, and it's like, okay, he can come off a screen, when some middle-aged white guy like me is like out there like faking a handoff or something. But I mean, we've never seen him do any like small forward stuff in a game, any like creation off ball stuff. It's just not something we've seen. And I went back and looked at his G League stats. He was obviously in Ignite. He was a very young guy on the G League Ignite the year before he was drafted, and put up pretty good numbers. And then I was looking at like what he did with the Herd last year, and it's not as good. He like regressed with the Herd last year. And I mean, he's still really young, but it's just like I was just kind of like thinking, wait, I'm not even really a big Ajax supporter, but like, and would I really? I mean, the Bucks can eat salary. Would I really want to waive Ajax for financial reasons and keep Tyler Smith? Like, what does that get me? I don't know. Like I'll pose it to you guys. Like, consider the cap stuff. I don't know that it matters a whole lot, but Ajax, you don't lose a lot of money if you waive him, given he's now only partially guaranteed. But like, if you had to choose like of those three guys who you would most want to keep in order, obviously Justin will choose Chris Livingston first, but like how would you rank those guys? Because I might say Ajax, Livingston, Smith. I don't know. And again, these guys are young. Like in 3 years, they could figure something out in some second or third iteration of what they are. But in the here and now, like as far as what's going to happen with the Bucks, it's just, I don't know. Like I tell me what my options are. If there's a free agent available that is like a playable NBA player, I'd probably take any of that guy over any of these guys.
It's an interesting question. We will get to our answers coming up after the break here. This next segment of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, your payouts are fast, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. And whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Camille, I'll let you go first with your order. I mean, I think we know who's number one for me, but also the Tyler Smith mixtape. It was funny when you saw the highlights and then you just kind of peeled away at the sticker on front of the tape. You peel it off and saw, oh wait, this is just a Ben Simmons tape from
Oh
3 years
no.
ago.
Not the Ben Simmons late. No, we ain't gonna do that to Smitty here. No, we can't Ben Simmons. But no, I think it's an interesting question to think about, right? Because when you think about how these players should fit ideally, and like what is it about their skill set that made the Bucks interested in the first place? How do they fit? You look at a Tyler Smith, and it's the shooting touch, it's being 6'9, 6'10, being able to have that elite skill set of shooting the ball well. Now, like I mentioned, we haven't quite seen that come to pass consistently in summer league here. The numbers probably weren't where you would hope that they would have been during his time with the Herd. But again, a very young player. And it's something I think about too when having conversations around like draft and the NBA draft and things of like that, where it's like the player that you're taking today ultimately is probably not going to be the same guy in a few more years. Like however it progresses, whether that's for the good or for the bad, there's going to be room to grow in their game. And Tyler Smith, always kind of like a stretch four-ish kind of build, but maybe a three, kind of tweenerish in that way. Not someone who I saw moving up as like a center. So like there's the shooting aspect is there for him. But then again, you have, Ajax and you have Chris Livingston. And with Ajax, it's more so a focus on like he can be that ideal wing defender. Maybe he can be a 3-and-D wing for you. You've seen him on ball have big moments like NBA Cup game where he's doing a great job defensively on the soon-to-be MVP of the league with SGA in that game. Like you had the moments where you see it with Ajax of like he comes in the game and the energy changes because of the way he plays, and that can be appealing. Chris Livingston, on the other hand, is somebody who we haven't quite seen, and there have been questions around what position does he even play. Like last year in Summer League, we saw the Bucks rolling him out as the 5 in certain lineups, and this year he was a 3 again, but you've seen him be the 4. Like he's a tweener's tweener at this point. But to see the progress that Chris Livingston made, and I'll say it like this because the strength was there. I believe last year in Summer League he averaged like 14, 15 points. This year was up to 20. And it was the way he got to the points that made me kind of go like, okay, there's a little something else here for Chris. The shot selection, getting the threes up at the bottom that he did. It was just something about his game where it's like, I'm still not exactly sure what position you are, but like I can see the athleticism. I can see you can do some things that could be helpful as a role player. So ultimately, I think if I had to rank those 3 with all that being said, at this point, I think I would probably go. I think I was probably still go Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston, Tyler Smith. But I do think that this upcoming season poses a chance for Tyler Smith to maybe be a back end of the rotation type of guy for the Bucks if he can continue to, elevate his game. I do think that 3 spot for the Bucks is an interesting one. Like Kuz is an assumption, but you heard Horst mention he's more of a 4, he thinks. You have Taurean Prince. We saw how that went in the playoffs last year. You've been hearing them go about how the young guys and how you want to play with pace and get the younger guys. And it's like Chris Livingston kind of fits those boxes, but I just haven't seen it in practice for me to put him above Ajax yet.
I think, like we talked about on the show a couple of days ago, Camille, I took Horst's response as I think Kuzma's going to play a lot at the 3, and Horst is saying this, but he's actually a 4. So we got to try to find as many minutes there as we can. I mean, it's no secret I'd put my boy Chris at number 1 on that list. It's tricky with the other 2. And when you first brought it up, Frank, at first I was like, really? But then the more you think about it, I don't know what the path to playing time is for Tyler Smith with how they've reshaped the route. Like, not that it was a strong possibility, but you could have somewhat talked yourself into maybe he could get like 10 minutes a night with Brook gone. And if you lean into Giannis, Bobby, and maybe there's something else outside of Jericho Sims. But the fact that you've got a 29-year-old center now that fits alongside Giannis, you still got Bobby Portis in the mix. You're going to have to try to find minutes to keep developing Jericho Sims. I don't know where he sees any minutes for Tyler Smith here, unless he does the exact opposite of what we saw in the G League a year ago and just becomes this year's version of Christian Wood, where then it starts to be like, hey, do we got to find some time for him? Otherwise, I just don't see where it's going to come from. And we know Doc trusts Andre Jackson Jr.'s defense. I don't know how much of this is a true belief, but how much we've heard them talk, and Doc specifically, about Ajax this summer and his defense and how elite it is. And then the big, but he still has to develop on the other end. I don't know how much of that is like, we're positioning him in case there's some value here versus we truly believe this. But seeing him play last year, I don't see any scenario where Tyler Smith gets half as many of the opportunities this year as Andre Jackson Jr. got a year ago. So for that sense, I'd have to put him last on that list.
I think my general like philosophy too is like with guys and positions, like especially in recent years, although this isn't really that new, but I never like to take guys and play them down a position. Like I can't pick. I don't know that I've ever seen Tyler Smith make a move with the ball, like dribble the ball and make a pass.
Yeah.
And so like for me, that basically like disqualifies him from basically ever playing the three. And like and this is honestly like the heart. I think this is the same problem that Chris Livingston has, in the sense that, you know, like I think Taurean Prince is a really interesting guy to have on this roster at the same time as Chris Livingston. I think they're pretty similarly sized guys. Taurean Prince led the league in catch and shoot 3-point percentage last year. Now, I'm sure, you know, Justin and other Livingston truthers will like point out
there's
that,
others.
You know, there's other things. There are dozens of you. I'm sure people could say like, well, hey, Chris does other stuff that Taurean Prince doesn't, you know, like motor and something. I mean, we've never seen that obviously at like a real NBA level. But like if I was Chris Livingston, I would look at Taurean Prince, just say like, I gotta like just sit in a corner and just figure out like, how do I become like a catch and shoot 3-point guy who then can like defend credibly enough, be switchable enough, and, you know, like don't screw up otherwise on offense. But I think one of the reasons why Taurean Prince, why people, you know, why when you look at like lineup data and other stuff, like Taurean Prince lineups like didn't work. Like the Bucks were not good when he was on the floor last year for whatever reason. I think a lot of that reason is because he doesn't have that sort of connector type ability. Because if you play a lot with Giannis and you shoot that shit out of the ball, that should work, right? And it's not like we can argue that he's not like a great defender of ones and twos, which was not fair that he was put in that position, you know, for stretches last year, obviously, especially in the second half. But it's not like, you know, he's a horrendous defender who like, you know, teams are going to attack and try to put into switches all the time, things like that, like, you know, whatever. So I think it's tough when you're a guy who it doesn't have like that ideal like 4 or 5 size, and you don't do those other things, because again, dribble, pass, shoot, right? Like if you can only do one, like Tyler Smith in theory can do one of those things, and he's relatively tall, but like defensively, he's always had question marks. Chris Livingston can do a little bit more dribbling, but you know, again, it's just very hard to go from being competent enough and showing stuff in summer league to like, okay, you're gonna like make the right decision and, you know, be able to be in that crucible of like actual NBA rotation minutes. So it's just really tough. And I think honestly, that's what with Ajax, I think that's to me the biggest disappointment with him. The most consistent part of his game offensively in the NBA has been his 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
Like he's been a totally respectable 3-point shooter. He made some 3-point. He made 3-point shots in Vegas again this year. And, you know, there are going to be people that say like, oh, look, 3-point shot coming along. It's like his 3-point shot was like, what was he, like 38, 39% the last 2 years?
He's like 37.
But it's just his decision making, like his decision making with the ball. I just was shocked as a guy who is like, oh, he was the point guard for that national championship team at times. And, you know, he's like got this basketball IQ and the playmaking and whatever. And then you just like watch the decision making, and it's just like, you know, like like just some of the plays last year where it was just like, he makes a steal and then like immediately throws a bad pass that gets picked off for, pick
By
6.
bad pass, you mean a behind the back pass in
Yeah,
traffic?
Stuff like that.
exactly. And versus like with Chris Livingston, where I think it's more like it's hard for him to make like simple passes, but he doesn't try crazy stuff. He's not
Yeah.
like going out of pocket. With Ajax, it's hard because I think he's good enough to be dangerous, right? He's like a good enough passer to like think that he's like 20% better, and he's unselfish, right? Which the unselfishness should be a positive, but I think with him it often veers into actually like, no, dude, like just make the layup, right? Which I think he did make some strides over the course of the season. Like you could tell he like tried to be more aggressive. There were moments in Vegas too where he went the length of the floor and actually like tried to attack. But yeah, it's tough. And I think like, look, is Doc the perfect coach to unlock his limitations? Like probably not. But it's also like you can't like construct an offense around hiding your fifth guy that could be out of the rotation on any given night. So it's a tough spot for a young guy, and again, I think he's got a ton of uncertainty, not just what he's on this team, but if he even makes it to camp, because knock knock, the Nance is coming here. We'll see, like and as you've been saying, you guys alluded to it. I mean, I don't know. I will say on all the guards they've been connected to, honestly, I think that's more opportunistic, just because like everybody who's like been good that's become available just happens to be like a 6'4" 6'4" guard, which is what they have like in spades already. So I don't know that they're like, oh, they want another guard and not a wing. I don't really know like what wings, like Amir Coffey. I don't, like there really haven't been the volume of like available wings either, because I think if there was, you probably would have seen them make more of a play for that. But I think it just so happens that everybody has kind of been similarly sized, whether it was obviously Beal and Smart are very different types of players, but from just a profile perspective, they have veered towards more guard size. So yeah, it's I don't know, we'll see. But I agree with you guys. I think something else is going to happen the rest of the summer. I don't think it's a big trade. I think that's what Horst was sort of alluding to with that.
Yeah.
Every humanly possible, whatever.
Human
possible.
Yeah. I took that as like, guys, I tried my best to trade Kyle Kuzma, but there wasn't any good option. And who knows? I mean, maybe, it's like if the Toronto Raptors realize, oh crap, we're a few million over the tax for a 38-win team, and we can cut, RJ Barrett loose and get under the tax by taking on Kyle Kuzma. Who knows? Maybe you could get a guy like that for, no real assets in addition to that. But I don't know. I mean, that's the only kind of thing I could really see between now and like training camp, like something like that, where a team just decides like, okay, we have some money. But I think otherwise, like what you're saying, I think probably they're just like, all right, you know what? We're just going to play Kuzma at the 3. Hopefully it works, and then we'll figure it out from there.
There's one other point I want to make on Andre Jackson Jr. and then a couple other tidbits that have popped up here in the past couple of days. We've seen Damian Lillard now have his introductory press conference back in Portland. The Bucks confirming something we speculated and talked about on a show a couple of days ago as well. So we'll get to those things coming up next. The tricky thing for me, and I was just talking about it in our comments section with somebody else the other day. I know the numbers say Andre Jackson Jr. is a 37% 3-point shooter. I think like we do have to also apply the caveat that he took like 73s last year, and it's still like 1 per game that he's attempting. So it's not as simple as, well, if he takes 4 more per game, then it obviously is going to increase and he's going to knock down that many. Like I still need to see a larger sample size. And I think that's the bigger challenge, is that's part of the decision making too, where it's like, just catch it and shoot it. Just catch it and rip it. Don't put it on the floor and get into trouble with some of the passes or other decisions. Like just up the volume from that standpoint is the way I would view that. Do you guys agree with that? Do you push back on that?
I think that's fair.
I mean, the numbers say he averaged basically 3 per 36 the last 2 years, 38 and 39%. So, yeah. I mean, you're right, Justin. He does not shoot like with any real volume. My eye test says that it's not like he's standing there wide open, turning down threes, right? Teams, if you play him like Ben
Yeah.
Simmons, he's going to take the three. And
Yeah.
I don't think he really even hesitates that much. And he'll even take some where he's not like standing there 10 feet wide open. Like
Yeah.
he will take rhythm threes. And I give him credit because I think he relatively quickly kind of realized like, coaches want me to shoot it. So I'm going to
I'm gonna
shoot
do it.
a catch and shoot three when it's open. So I give him credit there. But yeah, is he a guy, this, I think, Justin, you're getting at, like, there are guys that shoot 40% from three, and there are guys that like actually stretch a defense.
Yeah.
Like an Isaac Okoro type, right? Is a good example of somebody that I think was always in that zone of like, oh, he became like a mid-30s 3-point shooter and he could hit some corner threes. But is anybody really like is Isaac Okoro bending the defense? No. Like they will leave you if they think that somebody else is, they need to rotate over things
Just
like
about
that.
every player the Bucks have cycled through as role players the past couple of years. We can
They'll
apply
give him
that
the Grant Williams. Like, we're gonna
Yeah.
make sure, like, you're gonna have to beat us if that's the way you're gonna go.
Right. But I mean, generally the Bucks have signed lots of guys that, especially at the guard spots, that can shoot the hell out of the ball. And obviously Andres is a very different type of profile player. So yeah, I mean, I think, can he get up more threes? I mean, part of it is just like a touches thing. Like he doesn't touch the ball that much. And I think to me, it's more of, catching the ball 10 feet from the hoop and being like, oh, record scratch. And then, turning around and looking for somebody else to pass it to. And it shows up in the data, right? Like the offense just ground to a halt when he was in the games. And he was, I think he was the only guy who had a negative rating when he played with Giannis. Everybody else with Giannis had a positive net rating. Giannis, kind of just makes everybody, he's just deodorant basically for lineups. And obviously with Ajax, it just kind of didn't work, and they stuck with that starting five, and it was kind of a drag for a long part of the season. So so I don't know. It's funny, as much as I say all that, like, I'd rather not give up on Andre. Like, I would rather just sort of see what you have with him. I mean, he's still cheap, and he has a skill set that I think is unique. So I would kind of let it ride a little bit, because he's definitely a guy I could see, if you cut him loose, whatever, catching on somewhere else and finding a place where maybe it does work, right? And and he figures something out. Like, it's like, I don't even know who I'd really comp him to, but I just think of like Gary Payton, the second, another former Buck, found his way to Golden State, and they really just figured out like how to unlock him. And, he became a much better kind of corner three guy. But, it was just a really good fit for him, and they got him, turned him into like a, whatever it was, $10 million a year player, whatever he got from the Blazers. So, is that Ajax's destiny? I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, you'd much rather find a way to, trade him for something or do something, rather than just cut bait after 2 years and say like, well, ran out of ideas.
Yeah, and the problem with the lineups too is the bulk of his minutes played or lineups that he was on the floor with included Giannis, and Ajax is not going to be the best shooter on the floor in those lineups, so there's going to be other guys that are benefiting from those open looks. So I think that reduces the volume of threes he's going to take as well. But yeah, it was interesting when you brought it up, and now I think we've all kind of leaned there as well, of like, well, I wouldn't put Ajax last of that group of guys, and I don't know if we would have been saying that a week ago even.
He's just my guy. I just I just got to look out. Got just a backdoor Ajax supporter over here. He's never expected it. Yeah. Well, the only other thing I would say too is his role also becomes different on a team where you don't have Dame as your lead guard, requiring essentially like a designated defender. Because I think that was the premise of starting him, right? Is like, oh, well, that guy can just be a ball hawk, and you don't really need a fifth guy that does much because you've got Dame and Giannis. I mean, when your other options are Ryan Rollins and AJ Green and Kevin Porter Jr., it's just like, why do I need a guy who's like 5% better on defense, but gives me way less on offense? So that also, I think, in a weird way, kind of works against him.
We saw Dame introduced in Portland, I think earlier today as we record this. How I have no problem with and everybody trying to like pick apart he clearly wasn't happy in Milwaukee and look at how happy he is there now. Like, who cares? The guy was going through a lot off the court. He was going through a lot on the court. As we said a lot, I think the bigger thing to take from this is for a handful of players, and especially one that's currently on your team, it doesn't always work out when you move on. And when that happens, it's the new guy that usually gets the blame or doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. So that's potentially an important lesson there. I get Frank, have we done a show with you since the end of the saga with Dame? So what did you make of him going back to Portland?
Like most people, happy for him. I think kind of similar to what you're saying, right? Like no ill will to Dame. It was obviously just a very unideal set of circumstances with the injuries and both playoffs being short-circuited by first the Giannis injury and the Dame injury, and then last year, obviously, everything that kind of Dame went through. So, I mean, I have no ill will towards Dame. I have no ill will towards him not wanting to play in Milwaukee, given kind of all the context around it. And so, he hasn't like badmouthed the franchise or done anything to, and especially with some of the reporting that was happening, like, oh, Giannis wanted Miles there and like all this stuff. There could have been opportunities, right, where he could have taken some stuff personal or whatever it is, and I don't know. I mean, I don't get the sense the Bucks treated him unfairly, and I don't think he's taking it in a bad way. I think everybody's just been kind of professional about it, and it's awesome. I mean, like people are like, oh, I feel bad for. No, this is awesome for him. The Achilles, you can feel bad about him for, but the context of him getting waived is great for him. He's gonna make more. He's gonna make $70 million next year. He can rehab at home, and then he gets to go back to the team that he started with, that he's a legend with. And honestly, he has no pressure to win a championship now, which really simplifies his kind of the remainder of his career.
His pressure now is to up the value of that franchise so we can sell it and get into
it. Yeah. So yeah, it's fine. And I was selfishly, as a Bucks fan, I was happy he didn't go to Miami or Boston or something and ever be in a spot where he could hurt the Bucks directly. So go back to the West Coast. Be with your family.
We already lose to the Blazers anyway, so fine. Go back.
Exactly. He can come back, once a year, and Bucks fans, I think, will treat him well, and give him his video. And I will say this too: it's like obviously, like macro, totally get the, this was a failure. Wish if you could do it all over again, you wouldn't, all that stuff. But I mean, again, me, guys, ever the optimist. I mean, I would point out, like, the fact that Giannis signs that extension in the aftermath of him being traded for almost like doesn't matter what like on some level, that is like the most important thing. That I think for his arrival obviously was key in getting Giannis comfortable enough to sign that early extension. And then, it's like, I mean, of course, like in the national media, it's kind of a punchline to celebrate it. But like, I had a great time with the NBA Cup, guys. Like, when it happened, like, I was like, I'm celebrating the hell out of this. Bucks, odds are the Bucks are not winning an NBA championship. So I will enjoy this. That was super fun. The team got to celebrate something together. I wish Chris Middleton had not been sick and could have been there. That kind of made me a little sad, especially in hindsight. But, Dame and Giannis getting to celebrate, like, winning something together, like, that's cool, And for a week in December of 2024, Bucks had great vibes, and, the NBA media got to say nice things about them. That's cool. And, I think heart of hearts, I'm sure that meant a lot to Dame. He never won anything in the NBA, right? So shout out to NBA Cups. And shout out to Dame for helping get Giannis extended. And, now we just need year 4 of AJ Green to get, and an AJ Green extension to get Giannis excited to sign his next extension next summer.
I thought you were going to say the Ajax breakout is what gets the extension.
Well, hey, if maybe the Ajax breakout convinces Giannis to sign another extension next summer.
It's a good point on the extension. Like, did it work out on the court? No, but Giannis stayed here, and as we've all kind of said too, like, look, we're going into this with eyes open. We know it's probably going to get pretty dark whenever number 34 is not around. So I would much rather maximize the time that I have with him and say, yeah, I mean, look, you're not going to recoup the value in terms of everything that we've mentioned that he's done for the organization and city and basically created Bucks fans. It was hard to find. We were definitely anomalies for people that were this interested in the group for decades. So you're not going to ever replicate any of that. So yeah, I would like for the story to be Giannis finishes his career with one team and hopefully gets back to that level and a championship level. But the fact that it got him to re-sign or sign the extension can't go unnoticed. And, even there's a lot of moving parts to it, Camille, but even if that trade isn't made, really the biggest thing that you're missing out on is the draft picks, because I think we've seen the rest of the construction of this roster. The problem, and I don't mean this like to blame the guy, because we're obviously three of the biggest fans of his. The problem the Bucks ran into was the health of Chris Middleton, that they were just never good enough because that guy that was your second best player was not at that level anymore.
Yeah, it felt like that last series in Indiana, when Giannis was out, like that was the swan song really of Chris Middleton as we want to remember Chris Middleton, because after the ankle surgeries, like Chris was already losing the lateral movement defensively. And at that point, he was relying on his IQ, being a team defender. But post injury, it was very difficult to watch him play defense. So like the Bucks had to make a decision. And I think for me, when thinking of like the whole Dame saga, that all is part of what makes me the saddest, is that we never really got to see the fully actualized version of the Bucks healthy in the playoffs, trying to see how this would work. Not when Chris Middleton was here, and then not after the team was kind of reshaped around the Dame and Giannis duo and how to try to maximize that. And you just didn't get a chance to see it. So that's the sad part about it. But outside of the NBA Cup, we also will have Dame Lillard winning a All-Star MVP as a Milwaukee Buck, a 3-point contest as a Milwaukee Buck. We have some memories from that first home playoff game against the Pacers when he went ballistic, the Kings walk off, like a lot of good vibes for Dame.
The
and
first
even
game in a uniform, the winner against Philly.
Yeah, like it didn't work out, but there were still moments, and I have a lot of appreciation for him. And seeing like him doing his contract extension or the signing in Portland, his kids are like, so we don't have to go on the plane anymore to Milwaukee. And it's like, no, I'm here. Like, I think that's going to do him so much good, because that first year was marked with so much personal turmoil. And he mentioned how difficult it was for him to play not being near his kids. And he's going to be whole off the court. Eventually, after the injury, he'll find a way to get back onto the court. Like, it's a situation that makes a lot of sense. It's a feel-good story for him. And I'm appreciative of everything that Dame did while he was here. And it also now opened the door for the Bucks now to explore playing in a way that I think is going to be really fun to watch, to be honest with you, with Giannis really being the point guard of the team, so to speak, quote unquote, on offense.
Play different. And go ahead, Frank.
The only other thing I was going to say too was I'm curious what Giannis's perspective on Dame, because look at what Dame did. Dame wanted out, didn't think he could win a championship with the franchise where he was the legend, best player in franchise history. He goes to a team on paper, compete for championships. 2 straight years, just bad luck, first round exits, disappointment, and goes back appreciative of what he had. And I mean, we've talked about this. I think the nuance of what Giannis wants, the terms of what Giannis would want as he thinks about potential other opportunities, as he's sitting there, vetting every move the Bucks makes and closely watching their draft.
Yeah.
Really
still reviewing through August,
grinding that Bogolyub, Markovich, Mega Adriatic League tape to figure out if this guy was a good draft pick. Really looking closely at that. I've always kind of thought, like, I've always wondered, like, I bet Giannis realizes if he leaves and does not win, he is
It's
going to
different.
regret leaving.
Yeah.
You know, if he leaves and he doesn't win another championship, he's gonna regret
It's his
leaving.
fault.
And
It didn't work out with a new team because it didn't work
it's
with
gonna
you.
be on
It's
him.
gonna be the
Yeah,
perception. Yeah.
exactly. And that may not be fair, but like that's kind of the culture of and media of how this works. And so, yeah, I know Giannis wants to win championships. He wants to keep, pressure on he wants to keep pressure on the on the front office and all that.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I kind of wonder, like him seeing Dame go back. Who knows what kind of conversations Dame and Giannis will, have moving forward.
Yeah.
But I have to wonder, like that's a bit of a
Me too.
cautionary tale for Giannis to be careful, kind of what you wish for, and all the grass is greener stuff, and et cetera, et cetera. So maybe Dame helps us one more time on the way out,
Right.
kind of saying, "Hey, Giannis,
Come on, Dane.
just you got a good thing going. Just maybe,
Hey,
you
man,
can't
don't
win a
leave.
championship.
Yeah.
Just, if you end up being like Dirk, there's there's much worse face than
Yeah.
being, the Dirk of the Milwaukee Bucks."
Yeah. I mean, we said at the time after it happened too, like this is the cautionary tale to pay attention to here for every superstar, especially with what we all think are going to continue to be the changes in the league with this CBA. And the last thing on Dame too is again, I am nothing but grateful for his time in a Bucks uniform. It didn't yield the results he wanted, but you can't say he wasn't invested in it or Dame
Right.
clearly didn't want. Like the guy came back from a blood clot and played
Yeah.
in the playoffs. Some of the things he did
played
too.
through injuries his
Played through
first year
Throughout
too,
injuries.
his
right?
time
Like,
here. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, some of the things he did too in when the NBA Cup and how fun that was. And I don't think I'm revealing too much that'll upset the organization, but like these last 2 years were largely not fun, which is crazy to think about when you had that pairing of Dame and Giannis and it just didn't work. And especially the first year, obviously there was much more to it when you go through 3 coaches in a calendar year, but it just felt like there was this weird cloud over the team. So that stretch and that run into the cup was fun where you were like, man, I remember what this feels like. Let's get some more of this. And what Dame did with his money from the NBA Cup too, that he split it up with people behind the scenes
Mhm.
that were pretty vital and instrumental to all of those Bucks players, and spread it out to them and people that you'll never hear about. So this wasn't a Dame didn't care, or Dame didn't try type of thing. It just, you tried as an organization and it didn't work. So one of the guys that you bring in now to not replace Dame, but to take some of those minutes. Did you guys see the post the Bucks put out there of the 2 eras of Anthony basketball, and that Cole will in fact wear number 50? Um, I now let's just go all in. Like we had the twins for a while, or the brothers for a while, and that was the Bucks shtick. Although we can never get a second holiday. Now let's just be the well. We did have Luke Cornett initially, so let's just go
Frank
in on
Cornett,
that.
as I call
Yeah,
him. I
Al
always call
Horford, they
him
were
by his
linked
dad's
to as
name.
well. Like now, I'm starting to see why the Bucks were linked to Al Horford.
Yeah,
Familiar
Gary Trent,
practice.
Bucks
Yeah.
drafty, Gary Trent
The Shack of the
Senior,
Mac.
and
Yeah,
now we've got Junior. I mean, the bloodline stuff with the Bucks is always is pretty funny. So yeah, GP2 and
yeah,
GP Senior.
yeah. There's
Although that's
Um,
one I kind of want to forget sometimes.
maybe
yeah,
Vin
not
Vin
great.
Baker's kid was playing at
Summer
UWM.
League
Maybe we can.
and Summer
Yeah.
League. He was on the
Oh
Summer League
yeah,
roster
that's
a
right.
couple
Yeah,
times.
get him on a 2-way.
I don't think he's gonna make it into. Didn't he average like 3 points a game at UWM or something like that?
It
Like
wasn't great. Yeah.
Yeah.
probably not. Probably not.
Darvin's kid was at UWM too. I'm pretty sure he's still my neighbor. Like, let's get him in here too.
Yeah, isn't he with the team? I thought he had some role with
He's
the
in
team.
a
You got the
yeah.
yeah, you got the
Like
Rivers
player
children.
coach,
Look at the
player,
Rivers
yeah.
kid. Yeah.
At least one Rivers kid is around. Um, yeah, it's been interesting, but yeah, and I will say this too. If I were to, because I don't think we've talked about kind of holistically, but I like the Cole Anthony signing. Another example of like, honestly, it's like you just take like it's you don't really think about it from a free agency perspective, but especially with minimums, it's almost like best player available type deal. Um, he's talented, and hey, are we going to get a better player as a small forward? Like, probably not. And so we'll see kind of how it shakes out. But my guess is I still think Kevin Porter Jr. is kind of the most likely candidate to be starting.
Yeah.
I think there's an argument for Ryan Rollins is more of like kind of caretaker off ball guy. But honestly, I think they need firepower with Giannis as well. I don't think they can get too cute playing a bunch of guys that don't really have kind of like playmaking juice. And I think that's a Pete stat. Ryan is as big a fan as I am of him. That's still something I think, he's not a guy who just goes and gets you shots. He's not going to get you, like, oh, we need 15 shots from you tonight because, we don't have a lot of firepower. So, but yeah, Anthony signing, interesting. It was interesting. I was kind of looking at some of his data. You think of him as like, he's not that big. You think of him as like, well, defensively, he's going to be targeted. But it was interesting. I mean, with the Magic, like his metrics, like he wasn't a guy that, it's not like their defense really got much worse when he came in, even though he was oftentimes replacing Jalen Suggs, who's one of the best defenders in the league. I think I think he can kind of be confident enough. And I think, comparing to where we were a year ago, where you got obviously the big questions about Dame, and then, with Chris as well, for the reasons you mentioned, Camille, at the highest level, like what does Chris still have defensively? Now you're in just a very different position because, you have basically a younger version of Brook Lopez, a bit more mobile version of Brook with Miles Turner. You still have Giannis being Giannis. Kuzma, for all his foibles, I think is a versatile defender that, I thought showed well and worked as much as, probably you would have wanted defensively. And then, at your guard spots, you've got, I think, some options there as well, and a bunch of guys that, are at least average to solid, and in some cases, obviously better than that. So I think we've been saying, right, like if this team can be average offensively, that would be great, because then they can be like 8th or 9th defensively. That's probably like the ideal scenario for me in terms of kind of the path to this team having, a really positive season. So we'll see. So I like that one. And I look at the roster, like I still don't really get the Gary Harris thing.
Yeah.
Don't know what he's got left. If that was a clutch thing, maybe makes more sense. But
yeah.
So Gary Harris, I wouldn't have made that. If I put on my fake GM hat, definitely would have rather had someone other than Gary Harris, especially given the positional redundancy. And then, as we were saying, like the 3 guys sort of on the end of the bench, I would certainly not hesitate to cut any of them loose. If a better player, right? I mean, if Marcus Smart, I mean, we all like whatever we hate Marcus Smart's flopping and all that, but like if he's willing to come on a minimum, cut whoever.
Which he was not.
No, he didn't have to take the minimum, but certainly like cut Ajax, cut Smith, cut Livingston. Like I don't care. Like I'll gladly have Jimmy Haslam pay a couple million extra this year to facilitate getting a more proven veteran. But we'll see. I don't know if there's anybody else like that's going to come along. But who knows? Maybe trade deadline Chris Middleton buyout. I think you and Van alluded to it. Bucks are under the first apron, so they can sign him as a buyout candidate if it gets that far. Wouldn't that be a nice little fairy tale ending here if we could get Chris back in the fold?
Yeah, and Gary Harris and Miles Turner, I saw a lot of people like it's an age in favor. They don't have the same agent, but they're both represented by CAA. So I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Not clutch, but
maybe there's some to that, but it's not the actual same agent that's running this. I mean, I guess the last thing too is it's just interesting. I heard somebody else, one of the more prominent Bucks fans that makes a lot of appearances on some national podcasts talking about it too, and that I'm excited for this team, and mostly because it wasn't very exciting the last 2 years, which is crazy to say when you have Giannis and Damian Lillard together, but it's going to be different this year, and that's sparked my excitement.
Yeah, different can be exciting because you don't know what to expect all the way. where it's like the expectations for the team nationally are as low as they have been in quite some time here. You're moving to a different
Well,
style
that's
of
only
play.
because you got a bottom 5 front office.
I mean, right. The style of play should be faster. Like it feels like not like the Bucks were playing as if it was 1982 or anything like that, but to see a Bucks team with Giannis with more transition, more pace, like the concept sounds really fun to watch. And I'm looking forward to it. Like I know some people have concerns about if his usage is too high, what will that mean for him, months into the season, so on and so forth. But like, let's find out. Let's see what this looks like when it's a full-time thing with a young Bucks team, which we also haven't seen in quite so many years, with the Bucks really prioritizing going the veteran route and trying to win championships. So like I've been saying it for a while now, since it seemed like Giannis was going to be back in Milwaukee, of this should actually be pretty fun to see on the court and see how they play. So like I'm also very much looking forward to it.
It's going to be it's
Yeah,
almost
I mean,
like when
just
you go
honestly,
from your first 4-cylinder to a 6-cylinder car in the way that they're going to play now. Like, wow, this thing's got some punch.
I mean, well, you hit on it, Camille. It's like lower expectations just makes everything more fun, you know? And honestly, I think that's why people had a lot of fun with that 8-game winning streak. It's because it was scrappy and Giannis in a cloud of dust and all that. And it's kind of going to have to be more of that this coming season. So, we'll see. We'll see kind of whether they can kind of live up to it. I would be nice if Giannis gave a little bit more of a clear commitment,
Yeah.
maybe for an entire season. So maybe the cloud of, like, oh, well, maybe if they start slowly, he'll ask for a trade. It would be nice to not have that hanging over the team. I really want a solid start to the season, if only for that
Yeah.
reason, to just
Yeah.
clear that whole thing. But, we'll see. I'm very curious to see the schedule, mainly because I hope they have a soft start, because I really would to just kind of bank some early wins and not have another 2-8 sort of hole to have to
Yeah.
dig out of.
Hey, Doc the Prophet said we're going to make the playoffs. We're not concerned about that, and they did. So they can crawl out of a slow start if that pops up again, and we'll know the schedule in
Couple weeks, yeah.
probably 2.5, 3 weeks from now. That thing will come out, and we'll have a better idea. Sadly, it's probably going to be back-to-back years that the Bucks are not playing on Christmas Day. But it's going to be interesting.
Fine. I'll say it again. I'm fine with it.
I'm
I don't have to. I don't need
to get 2 days off.
I don't need a Bucks loss to put a damper on my Christmas, especially because if they did play on Christmas, it would definitely be a road game anyway.
It would be
So,
if nothing else, if they would have been healthy, it would have been the Bucks in Indiana against the Pacers.
Probably that would have been a good matchup.
But everybody looking for that too. When's the first time the Bucks are going to be in Indiana? And the Miles Turner reception, then obviously the 2 Blazers games, and when Dame makes his return to Milwaukee. So a lot that we covered on this one. We have Chris Johnson of the Here District is going to be with us on tomorrow's show. And then something else we're still working on for Friday. But that'll do it for today's show. For Camille and Frank, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.